Okay, so we can get started. Mr. Secretary, do we have a forum?
We'll call the roll.
Please.
Member Alan Miles.
Here?
Member Alfonso Carnes.
Here.
Member Adam Reed.
Here.
Member Jonathan Gold.
Here.
Member Arlen Shaw.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good morning. And the first item we have is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, the annual meeting. And a copy of that was supplied along with the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Okay, now we have before us the adoption of the 2015 water rates for customers north of the city.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Steve.
Board of Members. So at a previous meeting of the Water Board, we had proposed a rate for fiscal year 2015 for the upstate communities to whom we sell wholesale. The rate that we proposed was $1,573.61 per million gallons. It's a 5% increase over the existing rate. And we held a hearing on June 2nd in Valhalla in Westchester County. We had approximately 5 attendees. We had one party give verbal and written testimony at the hearing. Joel Dichter, whose law firm represents a number of our upstate customers. And subsequently, we had one written testimony submitted by the town supervisor of the town of Carmel. And the water board members received both a transcript of the hearing and the written testimony. So I would be happy to answer any questions, or I would ask the board to adopt the rate as proposed. The resolution that's before you has a blank in it for the rate, and depending on the rate that the board adopts, that blank will be filled in with the appropriate dollar amount per million gallons. And then the last sentence of the resolution has the last portion of that is bracketed and underscored because as the other part of this proposal, we are asking the board to approve the rate for excess consumption for each of these communities, which would be set equal to the in-city rate for water, which is $4,946.52 per million gallons.
I'm looking at the resolution. How many pages are there for that? I have one page.
It's
just one page.
One page and a few lines on the reverse
I
side.
have to turn it over. Okay.
That's-
Good, we're saving trees for using both sides.
Since 2010, we've been printing double sided by order of the then deputy mayor.
I'll ask the question that a former member of the board would have asked relative to New York. The upstate paying the same, less, or more than we are for
I'm sorry, are our upstate customers paying?
the same,
Yeah.
less, or more than we are here in the city? That's a question that would have been asked by one of the board,
Yes.
former board members.
Yeah, they're paying less. They're paying about 60% less than we pay for water in the city. The reason is that our in-city water charge includes some components that are not part of the upstate charge. For example, any costs associated with the Croton filtration plant, because that will only treat water distributed in the city, and all of the city's distribution costs, the 7,000 miles of water mains and treatment that we provide for the water down the line in Staten Island, for example, where we provide supplemental disinfection. So none of those in-city costs that are exclusively in-city costs are included in the upstate charge.
I assume that the argument has been made that not for, but for this, that would not, if not for the city need, the upstate wouldn't have water, wouldn't have a system.
We are,
That, and therefore, there is some, I assume that that's been litigated.
well, there has been litigation over the years. The board approved a settlement of litigation approximately 3 years ago. There is also current litigation regarding the excess rate, litigation that was initiated by Mr. Dichter, the sole witness at the hearing last week. But is that even though our water supply agreements require that each of the communities who take water from us have an alternate source of water supply, I mean, for many of our communities, as a practical matter, we are the only source. Yes.
Am I correct, my understanding that as respects entitlement water is in fact provided to upstate communities at a price that's lower because it doesn't reflect the distribution, as reflects the excess water, ultimately the charge that they pay will likely be higher because it includes their local distribution costs. We are not under an legal obligation to provide.
That's correct. That's correct.
Any other questions?
None here, Mr. Chairman.
And the recommendation is that we fill in the blank space with what number?
Yes, it's right
Oh,
here
okay.
in the preamble. That's $1,572.61 per million gallons.
We're paying about what? We're paying still about a penny for,
In the city. In the city, we paid $4,700.
So-
$4,946.52.
So,
and it's still about a penny, it still turns out to be about, for the arrival of the water and disposal of the water, we're still talking about a penny a gallon?
it actually less than in city with the 3.35% rate increase that the board approved on May 23rd. It's less than 1.3 cents per gallon, and that includes everything. That includes the wastewater treatment, as well as just provision of the drinking water.
From the testimony that I watched from the upstate proceeding, it seemed like there was general reference to it, but there was no specific argument that I heard as to why the Amwalk number, namely the 1573.61, is in any way inaccurate. Is that in accordance with your understanding?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? No further questions, I would ask for a resolution approving the recommended amount per gallon, $1,573.61.
Second.
Discussion?
So moved.
Move. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the upstate rate has been
Thank you.
approved. And I'm playing for a little time because I I would very much like to have Commissioner Rush's remarks recorded so that they could be available on Channel 1.
They will be if he speaks into the microphone.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And they're being recorded right now.
Okay, oh,
Yeah.
excellent, okay, very good, okay. So we have to still approve I was playing, we still have to approve
Yes.
an independent auditor.
Yes. So the last action item on the agenda is the approval by the board of the independent auditor Deloitte and Touche. In a meeting of the joint audit committee, the joint between the Water Board and the Water Finance Authority, on May 23rd, the audit committee approved a resolution to recommend to the full boards of the Water Finance Authority and the Water Board the engagement of Deloitte and Touche to be the independent auditors for the 2 fiscal years ending this June 30th and the next June 30th, fiscal years 2014 and 15. And 3 of our board members, Mr. Goldman, Mr. Freed, Mr. Carney, served on that audit committee which made recommendations. So I would ask any of them to comment if they want, or ask the board to approve the resolution which the full board of the Water Finance Authority did approve on May 23rd following a meeting of the joint audit committee.
And I would just note that while we're looking to reauthorize and rehire the Deloitte and Touche has been our auditor, in compliance and following general accepted accounting principles, there are going to be a rotation of partners. So while it's the same firm, there will be new eyes and new leadership from that firm on this to make sure that we have, in compliance with current principles and standards.
Thank you. Yes, that's an important point. The partner who has led the audit team for the last 2 years is stepping down on this engagement, and we're committed to
Move for adoption?
Yeah, let's see, we're going to, there's a motion to approve the selection of an independent auditor and authorization to execute engagement letters for the next fiscal year. And that would be Deloitte and Touche. Can I have that motion? Can I have a?
So moved.
May
Sorry.
I just ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
sure.
The authorization to execute the engagement letter doesn't involve a separate engagement letter from that of the joint audit committee, does it?
correct. It's not a separate.
It's one.
That's
Okay.
right.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
It'd be
Thank you.
Writing a joint engagement letter each one of the board meetings.
Yes.
Okay. Second, we got a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. I just want to note that in our package here, there is a memo from Al Rodriguez with regard to the open meeting law and executive sessions. I recommend it to your, for your reading pleasure, and we will be guided accordingly. At the take a look at it at the next session. If we have questions, I guess we can speak to you about it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say, I imagine that this does this constitute work product, and we're not distributing this? Yes. Thank you.
So, then, if it's okay with the board, I would like to introduce Paul Rush, our Deputy Commissioner of Water Supply. And he has with him David Lipsky, who is
Welcome, Commissioner. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Water Board. Steve had asked me to give an overview to the Water Board, I guess the request of you, Chairman Moss, and others, a little bit of context of the incident that happened in West Virginia and efforts we have in our own watershed to protect it and respond should there be a spill incident. So that's what I'd like to cover this morning. And as Steve mentioned, with me today is Dr. Dave Lipsky, who's chief of our distribution water research and science unit, and he's based here in Queens. So I'll cover a little bit on our water supply overview. I'll go through that very quickly, talk a little bit on the background of the West Virginia incident, and talk about the Bureau of Water Supply system and things that we have in place to identify and to react should an incident take place, and also talk about the protections that we have in place. These are some nice pictures of a Shokan reservoir, including one of our remote buoy systems that we use to test the water at different depths every 6 hours to aid us in delivering the highest quality water possible. Water system overview. This body certainly is familiar with the system. We have 580 billion gallons of storage, covers a vast area. The Bureau of Water Supply has 24 reporting locations throughout the watershed, and two locations within the city. Bureau of Water Supply has about 860 employees, and 760 are upstate, and about 100 are in city supporting our water quality programs here, the distribution lab, our water science and research arm, and sample collectors. And today, the system is about 98% of capacity. We're in a good position water supply-wise. Catskill, Delaware supply, our unfiltered supply, 1 million acres. It's a rural mountainous terrain, not much development in the watershed. 78% of it is forested. Forests provide the best degree of quality source water protection for our system. We have some shallow soils that produce very high quality water. That's why the city went up into the Catskills, because of the high quality of water, and it's a very, very soft water as well. And we're very fortunate that that decision was made to develop an upland supply more than 100 years ago.
That red line
This one here.
that runs around between the green areas and the perimeter red line, those areas there, are there protections in place for that? Is that what is the status of that?
So we have
It's within the drainage area.
the drainage area is within the green area, and the red lines are the divisions between the different sub-basins. So we have regulatory authority over all the green areas you see there. So we have watershed rules and regulations that cover all those areas. Our regulatory authority does not extend outside that area, but every municipal entity in any county where we have water supply infrastructure upstate is entitled to get our water under the Water Supply Act of 1905, with the exception of Dutchess County. So every other county is entitled to get our water, other than municipalities in all counties other than Dutchess.
I was thinking more of the activities that go on in that area. In the green areas, there's all kinds of restraints on what kinds of activities can go on there, what kinds of development. And my question was, in the areas that fall within the general drainage area that are not green, what protections, if any?
They're not subject to any restrictions by the City of New York. Our infrastructure that we have outside of the watershed, where we have the surface aqueduct, the Catskill Aqueduct, the city actually owns the land where that aqueduct runs. Where we have tunnels, the tunnels leading in there, we have subsurface easements and select parcels where we have shafts. Other than the subsurface easements that we have and the surface land holdings outside the watershed, we have no additional authority or protections. The protections, we rely on state law governs there, federal law governs there, and whatever local ordinances there are.
And if I could just add, at least some of the board members may recall that when the state was soliciting comments on proposed regulations to govern hydrofracking, that while they had preliminarily adopted a ban on fracking within the watershed area, the green area, we were pressing for buffer zones around our
That's right.
infrastructure that's outside the green area, the aqueducts that Paul just pointed to. We had wanted a wider buffer zone than the state at that time was willing to agree to. But that whole issue about the regulations regarding hydrofracking is now, basically we're starting from scratch again because the state missed its own
That's right.
deadline for promulgating regulations.
That's right. So the state missed its deadlines for promulgating the regulations. Prior to that, they had extended protections up to a 4,000-foot buffer outside of the watershed area. But the restrictions they placed outside the watershed along our infrastructure were insufficient to say the least. Any other questions, sir?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. And by the way, if you don't want questions during your presentation.
No,
you just
questions
wanna save-
are perfectly fine.
Whichever way works for you.
Okay. So I thought I'd bring a little bit of the Catskills down to Manhattan today. So this is a picture inside our Cannonsville watershed where we have the most agriculture as well. It is really nice this time of year. I encourage you to visit, take advantage of the recreational opportunities. We now allow kayaking on our Delaware reservoirs, Pacton, Cannonsville, as well as Schoharie and Neversink Reservoir. That's the advertisement. So the little background on the West Virginia incident. In January 9th, Freedom Industries facility leaked 7,500 gallons of a material that's used to wash coal. The leak occurred on the Elk River, roughly 1 mile upstream of the water supply intake for 300,000 people in the Charleston metro area. And this 4-methylcyclohexane methanol, it was stored in an above-ground facility, a tank that had not been inspected since 1991. The regulations didn't govern. This was not a chemical identified to be governed by federal regulations, and the state did not have an intense program to inspect bulk storage tanks that were above ground. Below ground, there was a program in place, but above ground, not for this chemical. So this leak of chemical went into the river and entered a water treatment plant operated by West Virginia American. American Water is a private firm, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, based in Voorhees, New Jersey, and they have operating units at different states around the country. West Virginia American is the operating unit in West Virginia. And when the chemical came in, there was immediately an odor issue inside the plant, and had an odor of licorice. It got into the plant, and a decision had to be made whether to shut intakes altogether, because they immediately identified it, and it was getting through the treatment process. The treatment process was not designed to remove this chemical, and they knew there was going to be an impact to the distribution system, but the decision was made in consultation with regulators was to continue to deliver water to the system. And the reason for that was one of the primary purposes for a water supply is to provide for public safety, and it was determined it was more important to maintain water to the fire hydrants should there be a fire. So the water got into the system. A do not use order was issued, and despite that, some people had drank the water, smelled the water, and 700 people sought medical attention. And in hearing this incident described, it was described as being a fortunate incident at a recent conference I attended. And the reason was described as a fortunate incident was the nature of this chemical had a very high or a very low odor threshold. So a person could smell it right away at a very, very low concentration and a very low toxicity. So it was a chemical that you could smell at low concentrations and was not highly toxic. There are other chemicals that very low odor threshold or very high odor thresholds and high toxicities. So in terms of chemicals, where this was a fortunate one, if one could say that. So in response, FEMA, the West Virginia National Guard, provided bottled water, and there were a number of ongoing investigations still going forward from OSHA, the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as West Virginia DEP. After the leak, the West Virginia legislature, there were some hearings there where the American Water Works Association, which we were a member of, testified at those hearings. And West Virginia passed some laws to require the registration of all chemical and petroleum tanks above ground at threshold of 1,320 gallons, and also required an early, yes, sir?
Commissioner, what's the significance of the 1,320 gallons?
1,320 gallons. I'm trying to think, is that a metric equivalent to 2,000, to some metric quantity of 2,000, what is it, 4,000 liters? I mean, generally. Yeah, so multiply, divide that by 4, 5,000. It's probably, that's what I suspect. It's probably equivalent to a liter, 5,000, as I'm failing my math skills, my quick math skills on the podium. 3.78. Yeah. That's what it probably relates to, but I'd have to go back and check on that.
Which means that chemicals that are being stored in tanks of less volume are not necessarily, don't have to be registered and therefore may not be inspected.
That's right. So any tanks that are less than this quantity would be not subject to this regulation. And this is not as, I mean, as we'll go into in a little bit, this is not as stringent as the regulations in New York State.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yes. In addition, it required an early warning system to be developed on the Elk River, to have detection systems and a system of notification, and required all water utilities to file source water protection plans. And this was a requirement of the amendments to the 1996 Safe Drinking Water Act, enacted by Congress and implemented by EPA, that all utilities had to do this in 1996, but it was a one-time requirement. This requires that to be updated. In Washington, there was a federal bill that was put together, sponsored by a number of senators from West Virginia, as well as Senator Boxer. It's called the Manchin Bill. S 1961, that would provide further regulation for bulk storage facilities to protect water supplies. This bill, I mean, it was introduced but is stalled in Congress, and some of the concerns that some of the regulators have on this bill is that it takes this protection, the source water protection piece and the regulation of these tanks, and puts it into the Safe Drinking Water Act. And that's a concern by some of the state regulators in having that authority go into an entity that regulates drinking water. So this bill right now is not moving. It's something we're keeping an eye on. And we're fortunate to really have higher levels of source water protection. In fact, being a leader in the field of source water protection. So here in New York State and what New York City is doing, there are requirements for quantities of different chemicals require permits from New York State DEC. And the permits are required for above ground storage of 185 gallons or more and all below ground tanks. So there's a much stricter regulation, a much lower threshold. And the state requires below ground tanks, monthly inspections, annual testing of lines and leak detectors, a very strict process that is enforced and periodically inspected by the state. And above ground tanks require daily visual inspections, annual inspections by a qualified technician, and inspections over 5 to 10 year intervals. So the city of New York we have above-ground petroleum facilities upstate for fuel oil, for gasoline, and also we have above-ground tanks that contain chemicals used in water and wastewater treatment. And we scrupulously follow these rules, and we do get inspected, and we have a very good compliance record. In addition, New York State DEC maintains an online database of all the permitted facilities. And one of the things after the West Virginia incident that we did is we did an internal review to see ways we can improve and be prepared for this type of incident. And what we did, and what we hadn't done previously, is we actually downloaded the GIS database from DEC, and we now do that regularly to keep that up to date. And this is an example of what our download is, and it's taking a look just upstream of Papacton Reservoir, the reservoir that provides about 25% of the city's supply, our largest reservoir. In Margaretville, we have a New York City DEP has a wastewater treatment plant with microfiltration, produces a very high-quality water that gets discharged to the stream. But you can see all the purple dots are petroleum bulk storage facilities that are in the watershed. The yellow dots are chemical bulk storage facilities, and the chemical that it's referring to in Margaretville has to do with an alum product that's used to remove phosphorus from the water, a settling agent. So as you can see, there are facilities. We now have detailed information on where they are.
Can I ask two quick questions before I move on?
Yes, sir.
One, I know that in addition to the West Virginia spill, there have been some transportation of chemicals where trains have derailed and other incidents. Have we looked at or concerned about transportation of, large quantities of chemicals within the watershed and incidents that could occur from that?
So there have been recent incidents around the country, and the issues come to the forefront. The transport of Bakken shale crude to get refined on the East Coast. We had first the incident that came to attention was the one in Quebec, and the shipment which was going to St. John, New Brunswick, and it is also being moved to Albany and further down the rail line, the CSX rail line, just outside the watershed. So those rail lines are right outside the watershed. But the main line does pass very close to a key DEP facility in Kingston, and we see those. We see those shipments going right by our laboratory. They don't go through the water. They don't go through the watershed, so it's not a risk neither east of Hudson or west of Hudson. But they do pass very close to our Kingston laboratory.
And the other question, I know a lot of attention post Sandy was paid to coastal flooding, but Irene, which was devastating, and some of the other storms that bring the heavy rainfall and the massive flooding upstate, which has an impact obviously on the watershed, but also thinking about the impact that those intense storms and inland flooding could have on bulk petroleum facilities and upstream storage. Is there any efforts to look at flooding and the quality of the protections for those facilities should storms like that occur more frequently?
So one of the things that we have in the filtration avoidance determination re-up for the next 5 years up through 2017 that was issued by the State Health Department in May. It has a program where we fund buyouts of properties in floodplains, and also has a business relocation program to provide funds to assist businesses in relocating outside of the watershed. The flooding that occurred in communities and the impact, the devastating impacts of Irene really pointed to the importance to have a program of that nature and encourage businesses and people to move out of floodplains, because when there is an incident, when there is flooding, the houses generally are fueled by home heating oil. That material can get into the reservoirs, it can impact quality. On the positive side, since we have such a large system and a flexible system, there's a high level of dilution, and a lot of the material actually volatilizes, and we have never detected, in our intakes in Kensico, the diesel range organics or gasoline. But we have in response to that initiated some new programs in our FAD.
Sure. Thank you.
So our spill response protocol in BWS, upon discovery and notification, which we can get from many different sources, we can get it directly from the public, we can get it from our police, or we will get notification from DEC of an incident. That information goes to a central point, our DEP police, who then contacts our spill coordinator and notifies key personnel. We then do a review on what the potential is for that incident to impact the water supply. And if it is serious enough or it's on water supply lands, we will dispatch staff, our BWS hazardous material staff, to the site, and if necessary, water quality staff as well. And then the actions and the work to clean up depend on the situation. We work very closely with DEC and their spill response staff in the 2 regions that we have in the watershed, Region 3 and Region 4. And we'll take, if necessary, we'll take samples to collect to see if there's an impact on the supply. In addition to monitoring for impacts and protection of the watershed, we also have a contaminant warning system in place. This system was developed as part of a $12 million grant by the federal government. It was completed in 2013 on time and on budget. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that system and some things we've developed as part of that to help us identify if there was a contaminant in the supply. So the program elements include online water quality monitoring, our routine sampling and analysis, public health surveillance, which is done by DOHMH, that's fed in continually into a computer system, our consumer complaint surveillance that comes in on our 311 system, and also our enhanced monitoring of facilities. That's all compiled and placed into a program and algorithm that forms our contaminant warning system. And supporting that is also a crisis and consequence management plan, which we periodically exercise. So first about our online water quality monitoring. So throughout our system, we have about 40 online water quality monitoring locations, upstate and in city. As part of this grant, we installed 11 additional monitoring stations in the city that continuously monitor water quality parameters such as pH, a measure of acidity and alkalinity in the water, base in the water, temperature, specific conductance that measures metals or salts that could be in the water, turbidity, measure of the cloudiness, and of course FCR. FCR is free chlorine residual. That one's not quite as obvious. Of course. This information is then brought back into our system using Metro E through cable connections, and also the wireless NiceWind system. And there are parameters set up to detect if things are out of the ordinary and trigger alarms. So the water quality data are transmitted in a near real-time basis to the system. And if something does come out as being out of a normal parameter and creates an alarm, it will automatically generate an email to key staff. Dave gets these emails regularly and was just sharing. He got an email yesterday. We had we had dropped chlorine residual at Kensico Reservoir. It had dropped down outside the normal parameter for a short period of time yesterday. And David picked up on that very quickly on his online water quality monitoring. In terms of public health, that was not an impact. We have chlorination at Hillview. There was no impact inside the distribution system. It was an upstate issue. It was just an example of how we pick up on incidents. In addition to that, we use the fish biomonitoring system. So at Kensico Reservoir, we have fish employed by DEP, who we monitor carefully. This biomonitoring is currently only at Kensico and has been planned as we bring the Croton system online to also create another unit at our Croton Reservoir.
What is, I'm sorry, could you explain fish biomonitoring?
So at Kensico Reservoir, we have a number of bluegills in a tank. Bluegills, a small panfish, And the bluegills are monitored continuously to pick up on their respiration rate, how quick they're breathing, their movements, their physical movements, and also to detect if the fish are coughing. And this optical measurement combined with electrical measurement can detect if the bluegills are stressed. The bluegills are a sensitive organism, and if the bluegills are outside of parameters or stressed, their stress could be caused by a contaminant. And that's monitored continuously. And if they go outside of normal parameters, there's an alarm that will trigger us to investigate.
Those are the canaries.
Yes,
of
in the coal mine.
Those are canaries. That's right. Instead of canaries, we use bluegills.
Are the bluegills actually in the reservoir itself, or are they in a tank that
They're in a
brings
tank.
in water
They're
from
in
the
a tank
reservoir?
where we're pumping water from the forebay that delivers. It's water that's being moved down to the city, so they're not actually in the reservoir, but they are getting the same water that's being delivered to the city. And developing this technology, refining it, we worked very closely with the U.S. Army Center of Environmental Health and Research, and we continue to work closely with them. You met with them just recently.
Amazing.
So we will also be installing the similar unit at Croton when that supply comes online. In addition, our consumer complaints surveillance calls come into 311, and the water quality and water infrastructure type calls that are coded go into a system that's analyzed and feeds into our response system to see if any trends or quality incidents trigger alarm levels. There's automatic daily notifications and mapping at the end of each day. That helps us identify where issues may be. For example, the system picks up on this is a dirty water event, a code in the 311 system, and this actually was an indication that there was a water main break in that location. So we get calls that indicate dirty water, water has a smell or odor, the type of odor, or type of smell. And this was helpful in identifying an algae issue that we had up in Kensico Reservoir several years ago. It was very, very useful. And feeding this all together with our online instruments and the data that comes from that gives us a better ability to detect on issues.
Well, what happened at Kensico several years ago?
So several years ago in the fall, we had a bloom of an algae known as Chrysosphaerella. Chrysosphaerella grows in water bodies that are pristine. And the indication that we had this, and it has a very low taste and odor threshold. And when it's okay when it's in the water, but when it's chlorinated, it produces it can change the taste of the water. So in our 311 monitoring system, we noticed an increase of complaints of metallic water was the code. And we traced those complaints to the tunnel that was delivered on Tunnel 2. And Tunnel 2 generally is Delaware water that does not flow through Hillview Reservoir. Tunnel 1, we didn't have the same response. So when the algae is oxidized by the chlorine, it also volatilizes, and when it got into Hillview Reservoir, the taste actually volatilized off, so Tunnel 1 wasn't affected as much as Tunnel 2 was. We went back and looked at limnology data, consulted with colleagues in Massachusetts Water Resource Authority. Massachusetts, Boston area is one of the other big unfilters that we work closely with when we have issues. And when we described this to the folks in Boston, they said it's probably Chrysosphaerella. Our routine limnology monitoring had not picked up on this algae. We got samples of what Chrysosphaerella looked like from MWRA. Our staff went and did a more thorough scan and did some sampling in the reservoir, and we found the Chrysosphaerella. And we took steps to alternate how we take water from which reservoirs, and the blend in Kensico And by selectively bypassing Kensico with water from West Branch and Rondout and providing some mix, we were able to quickly reduce complaints and improve the taste of water. At no time was it a public health issue whatsoever. It was more of a quality, a consumer, an aesthetic issue for the consumer. And I mean, in addition to providing safe water, we want to provide the best tasting water as well. So in conclusion, New York City made wise investments years ago when we developed an upland system in a rural protected area. The city is a worldwide leader in source water protection. Many utilities look to us for what we're doing and setting the example. The city's water supply includes the biological and technological monitoring contaminants that are integrated together, which are good investments that we've made to help protect the public and also ensure that we deliver the best quality product to our consumers. And certainly New York State is much more advanced and has much stricter regulations of chemical and petroleum bulk storage tanks than exist in West Virginia. And we're going to carefully follow the situation and the developments. And we're proud. I mean, the team in the watershed and in city water supply are proud to do this and take very seriously our responsibilities.
Thank you very much. I had a quick question, which is, do you this array of steps that you've taken seems remarkably impressive, and I commend you for your efforts. I wonder if you have seen other types of public health prophylactic measures or security measures that other water service providers have been able to take that you would, in an ideal world, like to emulate, but for whatever reason have not been able to, whether for funding reasons or otherwise?
So EPA has had a program, the Water Security Initiative, to help develop different systems in different cities. And Cincinnati was the first place. New York City got it, Philadelphia, San Francisco. And there's been a collaborative where these utilities have worked together and traded what's been successful and what's not been successful. Monitoring, maintaining, and calibrating this equipment is it's labor intensive. If you have equipment that's not calibrated, it's worse than actually having no equipment. We need to make the investment to make sure we're monitoring the right parameters and we're actually maintaining it. Examples of other things out there that we've seen that we may want to consider. Dave, you're closer to that.
Have the right instrumentation cluster at all locations. So there's some instrumentation that might be useful for some chemicals that we haven't applied, but I think that the investment in monitoring the water quality parameters that we need to monitor anyway for operational purposes is where our focus should be. So that's what we're looking at.
So it sounds like from your perspective, you've been adequately funded to do everything you can do in order to make sure that the integrity of the supply is protected?
Yeah, yes, we have. And one of the things we do, we are part of the Water Research Foundation, a research cooperative that we do invest over $500,000 a year into that research cooperative. And that helps us to develop better systems, stay in contact with the science, and help advance the science.
Thank you.
And I am a board member of the Water Research Foundation, so I'm very actively engaged in staying up on the technology and the research, and make sure it's going in a direction that makes sense for the city.
The runoff from hospitals, various kinds of wastes that come out of industrial activities, Is that come under the umbrella of this program, or is that handled differently?
So any hospital, industrial site, any wastewater discharge in the watershed is regulated by the state and by us. And it's required to receive a high level of treatment. It's required to have tertiary treatment with microfiltration. So it's very protective, and it's highly regulated. We conduct inspections of the plants. DEC conducts separate inspections of the plants. So it's something we do have regulatory authority on, and we think those protections are sufficient.
I'd just like to commend you. I work with probably over 24 cities around the world on source water protection issues, and from Beijing to Quito to Nairobi to Bogota, everyone speaks about the New York watershed and the story here in miraculous terms, and want to recognize the past investments that have been made, but also that it's not accidental today.
That's right.
That we've maintained that quality, and the degree of the investments, the quality of it, and sophistication is really second to none. So just want to publicly commend DEP, and particularly Commissioner Rush and your program for the Herculean effort, and really very impressive work that's being done and recognized worldwide.
On behalf of all our team members in water supply, thank you.
And I want to just say ditto from all the rest of the
Yes,
members of the board.
thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We know that you started out quite early today. I understand at 5 a.m. To be here with us, and that your day is not over yet. I want to thank you very much, Commissioner. I really appreciate you coming here and sharing with us this information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay? Steve, do we have anything else?
We don't. I would just like to take this very brief opportunity, since this is the last water board meeting of this fiscal year, and we likely won't be meeting again until September. I want to thank the board members. I want to thank our secretary, Al Rodriguez. There are only 5 of you at this point. We hope that soon we'll have all 7 chairs filled. And I just want to say that this has been the most engaged board, pound for pound, that we have had, I think, in the 8 years that I've been here. You ask us a lot of challenging questions, and you've been keeping us on our toes, and I think that is, what you've been charged to do. And so, on behalf of DEP, I really appreciate your service.
Thank you so much
Let's
for
turn
your
around.
willingness to
Let us just turn around and thank
help
you,
us.
and thank Mateel, and thank Al Rodriguez. And I want to thank the staff. Terrific support. We're very appreciative, and we look forward to a very productive year. I personally want to thank each and every member of the board here for making the effort to show up so that we could have the required number of people to be able to conduct business. So thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right. Anything further?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.